You know, the CAF Champions League is such a cruel competition. It doesn't care that you've got the most wins in your league. It doesn't care that you scored 100 goals. It doesn't care that on paper your team is meant to be miles ahead of the other team. It doesn't care that you have experience. It doesn't care that Pyramids has just lost the league. It doesn't care that Pyramids had to play a midweek game before this one. The only thing that the CAF Champions League asks of you: make the least mistakes and take your chances. Mamelodi Sundowns didn't lose specifically because Pyramids played out of their skins. They didn't lose specifically because, Pyramids scored a ton of goals. They lost the same way they lost versus we did. A couple of mistakes from experienced players means everything changes. Coach Cardoso wasn't brought into Mamelodi Sundowns to change the way Sundowns plays. He wasn't brought in necessarily to make sure that there's more wins and more games and all of that stuff. He was brought in to make sure that in this moment, in a final, you can stay focused for 90 minutes. Usually, the teams break towards the end of the game. But here comes Mamelodi Sundowns breaking at the beginning. I don't think I've ever seen Mamelodi Sundowns defend like that. There was an issue with Aubrey on the left-hand side, often getting beaten. There was issues with how the defense was organized, who was following who was meant to be where. And you can get away with some of these things when you play against cheaper and you go 3-0, you beat them 3-0 twice in a space of maybe 2 weeks. You can get away with these things when you're closing games down 2-0. But when you're playing a team that is relentless, that continues running, that isn't afraid, that doesn't look at you through the eyes of this amazing team, that just come to play, I don't think you can afford to do what happened there. And maybe it speaks to the fact that Sundowns is not tested as much as possible. You look at the set piece goals, you look at how they struggle with the high balls. We saw that with Makesi, with Chirambadare, Wonderboy Makubu. And these guys managed to find a way to take advantage of the same errors that Mamelodi Sundowns has. You see that sometimes if you can put Sundowns under pressure, they start shaking a little bit. They can't play the ball out as easy as possible. Well, it's easy to do that when a PSL team is only going to give you 20 minutes of pressing, 20 minutes of a hard game, 20 minutes of a hard game that has no finish. But when you play against the Pyramids team that runs for 90 minutes, things change. And what's crazy about this game is the CAF Champions League can be so cruel. But Sundowns was given so many chances. If Matthews scores that one-on-one, it changes the outlook of the game. Before halftime, I believe it was. If Modiba was sent off after that second foul, that would have changed the game. It's not like Sundowns weren't given chances. But I think the saddest part of this game and this performance and this loss in particular is that you've waited so long. Since 2016, you've waited to be in a final again. And for the most part of that game, you don't show up. For most part of that game, you're not pushing, you're not playing. Ribeiro's hiding. The defense is in 6s and 7s. They can't even command their way to play the ball out. Every time they win the ball, Pyramid shows you what a committed team looks like. 2 players coming into press, throwing everything on the line. Now, if we get into the game, obviously the one big standout has to be Aubrey Modiba. I've spoken about Aubrey Modiba before. He's an incredible player. I think his offensive capabilities are great, but his defensive side lacks a little bit, especially when you play against high-end people who are going to come at you. Very physical. He lost a lot of physical battles that then put his centre-backs into trouble. Now, I would say that Lunga was the answer. I wanted Lunga to start. I don't know how he would have done if he started, but Lunga came on and made very similar mistakes. I'm one of the people that called for Jayden Adams to come into the game. But it felt as though Jayden Adams, Allende, and sometimes Mokwena were just overwhelmed in the midfield by how hard Pyramids was running. Up top, for some reason, early on, from the onset of the game, but early on, they kept losing balls unnecessarily. Passes going astray. There was one where Ribeiro got the ball on the right-hand side, and he sort of, I don't know who he was passing to, but he like jabbed it back, and there was no one there. And I think you could tell what type of night it was going to be for Mamelodi Sundowns. Pyramids, on the other hand, came in and they played the Pyramids way. Hard running. Take every transition. Press very high. Stop them from playing out so they play long balls you can win and eat. Okay, so I know I stopped the video a lot, and a lot of you are wondering, why are you asking for money? So I wanted to show you. I asked for money because I want to do more of this. Huh? But the truth of the matter is that it took over an hour in order just to render that shot. And it takes even longer when I'm doing my normal content because, guys, here's the unsung hero of the channel. And unfortunately, Shem, wazama, but the screen is broken. I have to use a second screen, and the performance is not up to it. So I'd really love to upgrade things like that. And when you look over here, this is what the setup looks like. Rehenga di patlo and rehenga di green screen, which is a reality of being a South African content creator. Also, this is what people think is my studio. It's actually my house. So if you still don't know that I'm doing all of this from my home, then I don't know. But that is essentially what I want to do. More of these cool things. But I need you guys to please help me out by donating 50 Rand or more into this account. We're fighting for multi-choice. And for multi-choice, but there are subscription models all over the place. And I'd love to give the biggest quality while also being able to pay my rent and do things like that. That is where your money is going. And I promise to give you only the best content that I can if you do throw something in. So I just wanted to show you guys what I want to do with your money. I want to take this South African football and fulfill my dream of taking it into the future. But thank you guys so much. Remember, this is the bank account that you deposit into. Get back into the video. The big mistake that Pyramids almost committed was, when a team is 2-0 up, they sit back and they go, no, you know what, let's try and defend, which is not what Pyramids does. They sat back a little bit too deep and allowed Mamelodi Sundowns to gain some confidence, and in turn Sundowns scores, and that I think made the end of that game tense, unnecessarily tense for Pyramids, who had pretty much wrapped up the game. They were suffering a little bit from, some of that thing we see with South African teams where they don't know when to switch off the tap. They don't know when to just sit back and relax. And you could see the Pyramids coach standing up and trying to push them forward. He was telling them to go forward because, guys, these guys are coming. You have to go. You have to move forward. You have to push. And it goes back to that thing I always speak about, especially when teams play Sundowns. If you defend. If you're in a low block. But still keep your danger when you come out. If you don't keep your danger, Sundowns gains confidence, and that is how they win a lot of games. Fiston Mayele could have had a couple of chances there, but I think he was dead tired by the end of that game. He didn't have anything. He couldn't do anything. He didn't have anything left in his legs, and you could tell by the way he was chasing the ball, still pushing. Now, the big question that everybody is going to speak about is, if you have Themba Zwane on the bench, can Themba Zwane change the game, come in and change the game? Now, Cardoso was sitting with two options. Number one, maybe you bring on Sales and Zwane, let them combine Nabo Ribeiro and maybe start playing the ball a little bit more. People have spoken about the control that Themba Zwane might be able to bring to Mamelodi Sundowns, especially in the final third. But Cardoso went for option number two, which was to bring in Lebo Mutiba and Peter Shalulile. I guess the idea behind that was, if we're going to have a photo finish, if we're going to be pushing towards the last minute, rather we put balls into the box and we try and beat them that way. Rather we put balls into the box and have Mutiba and Shalulile fight the other team, fight the other defenders to balls, and maybe something will drop, which almost worked out a couple of times. So again, I don't think you can fault Cardoso tactically. I don't think you can fault Sundowns in the way that they played in terms of how they set up. You can understand some of the thoughts behind what they wanted to do, going back to the Sundowns that we're used to, that we know, going back to maybe trying to control the games a little bit more. But the CAF Champions League doesn't care. The CAF Champions League doesn't care if you are helicopter football, tiki-taka. It doesn't care. The team that commits the least mistakes and takes their chances usually wins. And one last thing, you have to want it. And for all of the talk that Mamelodi Sundowns has made over the past few years, speaking about this final, speaking about getting back to the top of the mountain, speaking about, fighting to get back there, I don't think they fought. And by the time they woke up and gave us something, it was too late. It was done. Pyramids wins its first CAF Champions League in its history. Remarkable story from 2018. It's always hard to play the underdog. It's always hard to face a team that is new to a competition, a team that is hungrier than you, a team that understands how it plays, that doesn't compromise on how it plays, that plays out of pure desperation, out of pure adrenaline, that fight up until the end. It is not easy. And I'm going to bring up something I've spoken about before, that maybe Mamelodi Sundowns is overthinking a lot of this competition. Rulani didn't fail because he was outplayed. Cardoso didn't fail because he was outplayed. They failed because they made the most mistakes. They failed because they couldn't focus for 90 minutes. And maybe the one thing we need to learn from the North is that a game, you have to stay in the game up until the last minutes. Something is going to fall out of somewhere. Very big questions to be asked about Coach Cardoso, because last season, Coach Rulani was fired for having a similar record, winning the league, not winning the other trophies. And I believe Rulani won the AFL last season. But in any case, it's a very similar thing. And they made sure that we know. They made sure that we know that it came down to the Champions League. How true that was, I don't know. But now there's very real questions of Cardoso. And maybe one of the questions for Sundowns is, maybe you need to bring in somebody that has actually won the Champions League. Because it seems that idea, that motivation, that focus may exist with those coaches. Cardoso loses his second final in a row, having reached the final last season with ES Tunis. Back to the drawing board for Masandawana in terms of the CAF Champions League, but hopefully they can dust themselves off and get ready for the Club World Cup kicking off, I believe, on the 18th. So that's going to be very interesting to see. Hard luck, Masandawana. Hard luck, Mzansi, for not being able to bring back a second star. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, everyone.